Across the golden skies of the Varan Empire, her name was spoken like a song of sorrow and beauty. Princess Elira, daughter of light. She was the most adored and the most feared being in the galaxy. Her silver skin shimmered like moonlight, and her long white hair flowed like silk under the twin suns. Her presence filled the grand halls with grace, but her eyes told another story, a story of loneliness. Every courtier bowed before her with trembling hands, not out of love, but out of fear. For years, whispers haunted the marble walls of the royal palace. It was said that anyone who tried to win her heart faced a cruel fate. Some vanished into the night, some fell into madness, and others simply died in their sleep. The priests called it the curse of the heartlight. The nobles called it divine punishment. Elira called it her prison. When she was a child, she used to run through the gardens, chasing crystal birds and laughing freely. But as she grew older and suitors began to arrive, tragedy followed. One by one, those who claimed affection for her suffered. Soon no one dared to even look her in the eyes for long. Her father, Emperor Varan, locked her away within the palace walls to keep her safe. He surrounded her with guards, servants, and courtiers, but none who truly cared. Elira's days became long and quiet. She watched the stars through her window, imagining worlds beyond her own, worlds where hearts were free and love was not cursed. In her solitude, she often wondered if there was someone somewhere who could see her not as a symbol or a curse, but as a woman longing for warmth. And then, one fateful dawn, a new kind of visitor arrived. The humans had come. They were the newest species to join the Galactic Council, strange, stubborn, and brave. Their bodies were fragile compared to the mighty alien races, yet their spirits were unbreakable. They had survived on a death world, as the Varan called Earth, where storms, wars, and hardships were part of life. To many, they were savage. To others, they were fascinating. Among the delegation sent to the Varan court was Captain Mason Hale, a human soldier chosen as an envoy. He was no prince, no noble, just a man of duty with tired eyes and a scar across his cheek. His dark hair was messy, his uniform plain, and his manner simple. The Varan nobles whispered behind jeweled fans, laughing at his lack of grace. When Mason entered the throne room, he bowed awkwardly, armor clinking against the polished floor. "Captain Mason Hale of Earth, at your service, your majesty," he said in a firm, respectful voice. Elira sat beside her father, silent as always. But when Mason looked up, their eyes met, and for the first time in years, she didn't see fear. His gaze was steady, curious, even kind. That single look broke through the cold silence that had surrounded her heart. Later that evening, during a royal banquet, Mason found himself seated across from her. The nobles spoke in polished tones, boasting of victories and wealth. Mason stayed quiet, uncomfortable among the glittering creatures of high status. Elira noticed his unease and, for reasons she didn't understand, felt the urge to speak. "You do not seem to enjoy our feasts," she said softly. Mason looked at her, surprised that the untouchable princess had spoken to him. "I guess I'm more used to field rations than fancy dishes," he replied with a half-smile. "But your world, it's beautiful." Elira's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Beauty can be lonely, Captain." The words came out before she could stop them, honest and fragile. Mason tilted his head slightly. "Then maybe you've just been surrounded by the wrong kind of people," he said. No one in her life had ever spoken to her like that. So simple, so human. There was no fear, no worship, no pretense, just truth. The court fell silent around them, shocked that anyone dared speak so casually to the cursed princess. Yet Elira didn't scold him. Instead, she laughed. It was a sound so pure and unexpected that even the guards froze. From that night, something changed. Mason didn't avoid her gaze like others did. He didn't flinch at the old stories about her curse. He talked to her like she was just another soul in need of company. Elira, for the first time in her life, felt seen, and though neither of them knew it yet, that single moment, the human's courage to speak to the cursed princess had set in motion a story that would shake both their worlds. Because no one had ever dared to court the princess until a human looked into her heart and saw hope instead of fear. Days turned into weeks, and Captain Mason Hale remained at the Varan Palace. Each day he learned more about the strange, luminous world of the princess, while Elira discovered more about the human who had dared to look at her without fear. Their bond grew quietly, like a hidden river carving its way through stone. Elira showed Mason the palace gardens where crystal trees chimed in the wind and flowers glowed in the twilight. She led him to secret courtyards where no courtier dared to go, where fountains whispered forgotten songs and silver birds circled above, their wings sparkling in the sun. Mason listened with wonder, but he never treated her as someone untouchable or divine. He stumbled over Varen words, laughed at her jokes, and asked questions that no one else dared to ask. "What makes you happy, princess?" he asked one evening as they walked beneath a sky painted with two suns. Elira hesitated. She had never been asked such a question before. Everyone wanted her obedience, her presence, her beauty, but never her happiness. She thought of the palace halls, silent and cold, and the suitors who had vanished. Then she whispered, I like moments like this, simple, quiet, away from everyone." Mason smiled, brushing a stray strand of silver hair from her face. "Then I'll give you as many moments as I can." Her heart thumped in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time, she didn't feel fear or sorrow. She felt alive, but the court watched them with suspicion. Rumors spread like wildfire. The nobles whispered about the human who dared to speak to the cursed princess. "He will die," they said, "or she will." Some claimed that the curse would strike immediately, others that a shadow would follow them until both were gone. Elira ignored them. She wanted to believe in something new, something stronger than fear and superstition. Mason became her companion, her friend, and slowly, something deeper. Every stolen conversation, every shared laugh chipped away at the walls around her heart. One evening, they sat by a fountain where moonlight danced on the water. Mason took her hand gently, hesitating. "Elira, do you ever think about leaving all this behind?" She looked at him, eyes wide. "I've thought of it, but I cannot abandon my people. I cannot leave my father. This palace, this life, it's all I know." Mason nodded. "I don't ask you to leave, I just want you to know that someone sees you. Not the princess, not the curse, just you." The honesty in his words made her chest ache. She realized how starved she had been for something so simple, someone who loved her not for her status but for her. Tears welled up in her silver eyes and she whispered, "I don't know if I'm allowed to feel like this." "Allowed to hope." Mason squeezed her hand. "Hope isn't a crime. Love isn't a curse. Maybe the rest of the galaxy is afraid, but not me." That night, Elira lay awake staring at the ceiling of her chambers. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating a feeling she hadn't dared to name. For the first time in her life, she imagined a future not dictated by fear, not controlled by prophecy, but by choice. But the shadow of the curse lingered. Ancient texts spoke of a heartlight that would destroy any who came too close. Elira knew that danger was real. She had felt its bite in the stories of those who had tried to love her before, and yet she could not stop herself from reaching toward Mason, drawn to him as if by some invisible thread. One afternoon, Mason injured himself during a training exercise. The palace healers panicked when the wound glowed faintly, reacting strangely to Elira's presence. A whisper ran through the halls. "The curse is awake." Elira's heart froze. She rushed to his side. "No, it cannot be," she cried. Mason, though in pain, reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "Elira," he said softly, "I don't care about curses or prophecies or what the others say. I'm not leaving you." Not now, not ever. Her tears fell freely. The world had told her for years that no one could love her safely. But here was a human who ignored fear, who looked at her with courage, who claimed her heart without hesitation. That moment, quiet, simple, yet impossibly strong, changed everything. Elira realized that maybe the curse wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a test for the one person brave enough to love her for who she truly was. And Mason? He had no idea that his heart, stubborn and human, was about to challenge centuries of fear, prophecy, and superstition. But he would, because he had seen the princess not as untouchable royalty, but as Elira, the lonely, luminous girl who deserved to be loved. In the silent glow of the garden with two suns setting behind them, the impossible began to feel possible. No one had dared to court the princess before, but the human had already stolen her heart. The bond between Elira and Mason grew stronger with each passing day. and yet the shadow of the curse lingered like a storm cloud. The palace halls, once silent and cold, now buzzed with whispers. Servants glanced nervously at the two, and nobles muttered behind jeweled fans. The word curse carried weight beyond imagination, and now it seemed to be stirring once again. Elira and Mason spent their afternoons wandering the palace gardens, often losing track of time. Mason was fascinated by the floating flowers, by the singing crystals, by the silver leaves that danced in the wind. But even as they laughed and shared stories of their worlds, Elira could feel the first twinges of unease. The subtle energy that warned her something ancient was awakening. One evening, beneath the twin moons, Mason held her hands in his. "Elira," he said quietly, "whatever happens, I'm not afraid. I'll face it with you." She looked into his dark eyes, filled with sincerity and courage. The words made her heart swell, but fear curled at the edges of her mind. "Mason, the curse, it's real. Many have tried to love me, and it ended in tragedy." He shook his head. "Then they weren't human. We don't give up. We fight even when the odds are impossible. Even when the world says no. Even when the stars themselves are against us." Elira wanted to believe him, but the warning signs were undeniable. That night, as she prepared for bed, her chest burned, a warmth spreading unnaturally across her skin. Her reflection in the mirror shimmered, the faint glow of the heartlight beneath her ribcage pulsing like a heartbeat of its own. She gasped and stumbled, calling for a servant. Mason arrived immediately, worry etched into his face. "What's happening?" he asked, his hands gently resting on her shoulders. Elira's voice trembled. I don't know. Something is stirring inside me. The curse. It's awake." Mason didn't hesitate. He took her hands, anchoring her with his presence. "Then we face it. Together. I won't leave you." Over the next few days, the palace descended into chaos. The priests and ministers convened in urgency, debating what should be done. "The curse is active," and they warned the emperor. "No mortal has survived it. The princess is in danger, and so is the human who dares to claim her heart." The emperor's face was grim, but Elira felt something shift inside her. She realized that the world she had known, rules, fear, and obedience, no longer mattered. Mason's bravery, his simple courage, was teaching her something new, that love was stronger than destiny, stronger than fear. One afternoon, the curse made its presence undeniable. Mason, walking beside her in the garden, suddenly felt his strength waver. A faint glow pulsed on his skin, faintly like Elira's heartlight. He fell to his knees, gasping, but his eyes met hers with unwavering determination. "Elira," he whispered, "I told you. I'm not leaving, not now, not ever." Her tears fell freely, and in that moment she realized that the curse, though powerful, was no match for the bond they had forged. It was trying to test them, to push them apart. But love, true love, could defy even ancient magic. Elira knelt beside him, cradling his face in her hands. "I won't let it take you," she vowed. Her heart thrummed with a strange new energy, bright and warm. She felt something shift, an unspoken connection, a force beyond both their understanding. That night, she dreamt of stars raining across the sky, of a human hand reaching for her, of a light that grew brighter with each heartbeat. She woke with a new resolve. She would not hide. She would not fear. If the curse had awakened, she would meet it, but she would do so with Mason by her side. For the first time in her life, Elira felt like she had a choice. And for the first time, she believed that the impossible, survival, love, and freedom, might just be within reach. The palace, filled with whispers of doom, did not understand what was happening. The people who had feared her for years could not see that hope had found its way into the heart of the princess. They could not see the human who had claimed her heart, who now stood as her shield, her anchor, and her courage. And in the quiet of the garden, beneath the twin moons, Elira and Mason held each other tightly. Neither could see the future, but both knew one truth. Whatever came next, they would face it together. No one had dared to court the princess before, but the human had not only claimed her heart, he had awakened her own courage. The Varan court was in uproar. Rumors had reached every corner of the palace. The cursed princess was seen walking hand in hand with a human, a creature considered fragile and unworthy by Varan standards. Ministers whispered, priests shook their heads in dread, and the Emperor's advisors demanded immediate action. "Your Highness," one minister said, bowing stiffly before Illyra, This human is dangerous. His presence near you could awaken the full force of the curse. History tells us he will not survive." Illyra lifted her chin, her silver hair glinting in the sun. "I am not a child to be hidden," she replied calmly. "If danger is what you fear, it is mine to face," the court murmured. They had never heard her speak with such authority. But even as she stood firm, fear coiled in her chest. The curse had stirred before, sending chills through her nights. And now it seemed to gather strength in the shadow of her love for Mason. Mason, unaware of the full intensity of the court's anger, approached her with a steady step. He took her hand in his, looking into her eyes with a calm she found impossible to resist. "Illyra," he said, "we face this together. No curse, no prophecy, no galaxy can change that." Her heart swelled at his words, but the very next day the curse made itself known in unmistakable terms. As they walked through the gardens, a soft, radiant light began to glow from Illyra's chest, bright enough to make the surrounding flowers quiver. Mason noticed immediately and wrapped his arms around her, grounding her. "Don't panic," he whispered. "I've faced worse." But Illyra could feel it, a strange burning energy radiating outward. It was a force both terrifying and beautiful. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest. "It's stronger than ever," she gasped. Mason knelt beside her. "Then we fight it," he said firmly, pressing his hands over hers. A warmth spread from their joined hands, and for a fleeting moment the burning subsided. Yet the palace guards, witnessing the light, called for reinforcements. The Emperor arrived with a small detachment of soldiers, and the air crackled with tension. "Princess Illyra," he said sternly, "this human endangers you and the entire royal line. Leave him. Do it now or face exile." Illyra's voice rang clear across the courtyard. "I will not abandon him." Not for fear, not for duty, not for prophecy. The court was stunned. No princess had ever spoken so boldly, and no human had ever dared to defy the Emperor in his own palace. Mason, though trembling slightly under the weight of authority and fear, remained steadfast. He stepped closer to Illyra, unwavering. The curse responded. A blinding light erupted from her chest, lifting leaves and petals into the air. The ground trembled, sending a ripple through the gardens. Soldiers stumbled, and even the Emperor's advisors felt a chill crawl up their spines. Mason gritted his teeth, placing himself between the princess and the advancing guards. "I won't let anyone harm her," he said, his voice low but firm. "Not the curse, not the court, not even the stars themselves." The light flared again, but this time it didn't strike Mason down. Instead, it seemed to respond to his courage. The pulse of the heartlight slowed, pulsing in rhythm with the steady beat of his heart. Illyra felt it too, the terrifying power that had haunted her entire life now tempered by his presence. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Mason, it's reacting to you." He squeezed her hands. "It's not the curse that's powerful," he said. "It's our choice to face it together." In that moment, the palace fell silent. Nobles and priests watched in awe as the legendary curse, once thought unstoppable, was calmed by the bond of a human and a princess. For the first time, history was being rewritten. Illyra stood, pulling Mason up with her. The glow faded, leaving only the warmth between them. She looked at the court, her silver eyes fierce and unafraid. "If love is forbidden, I will break that rule," she said softly. Yet every word rang like a command. Mason smiled, his hand resting against hers. "And I will stand by you, always." Even the Emperor, watching from a distance, could not hide his astonishment. A human, a fragile, fearless being, had not only faced the legendary curse but had also survived it. He had done what no Varan noble ever could, and Illyra, once untouchable and feared, finally felt something she had never known: hope. No one had dared to court the princess before, but the human had not only claimed her heart, he had begun to conquer the curse itself. The palace had not seen such chaos in centuries. The court was divided, some praising the human's bravery, while others whispered that disaster was imminent. Illyra could feel it too, the heartlight inside her pulsing stronger than ever, reacting unpredictably whenever Mason was near. It was no longer a gentle glow. It was a storm, a living force that threatened to consume everything around her. One morning, Illyra awoke to find Mason already waiting outside her chambers. His dark hair was mussed, his armor scuffed. But his eyes held that same quiet determination that had drawn her to him. "We can't ignore it any longer," he said softly. "The curse is growing. It won't wait for us to be ready." Elira nodded, though fear tightened around her chest like iron. "I feel it, Mason. Every time I breathe, it burns inside me. And the court, they are watching, waiting for it to claim you." He took her hands, holding them like a lifeline. "Then we face it together. No one else's fear matters, only ours." Their steps led them to the palace gardens where the twin suns bathed the crystal trees in gold. For a moment they found calm, until the curse stirred. The flowers trembled, petals glowing brighter, and the ground beneath them shook. Elira gasped, clutching her chest. The light from her heart light was blinding now, pulsing like a heartbeat gone mad. Mason didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Elira, focus on me. Don't let it take your mind. Breathe with me. Fight it with me." She looked into his eyes, and in that instant something shifted. The raw, terrifying power of the curse seemed to meet his courage, and for a heartbeat it paused. Elira felt a connection she had never known, a thread linking their hearts, a warmth that no curse could extinguish. But the calm was brief. The palace bells rang urgently as guards stormed the garden. Ministers shouted warnings, priests called for intervention, and the emperor himself appeared, his face pale with worry and anger. "Princess Elira, human," he commanded. "Step away from each other at once. The curse will destroy you both." Elira refused. Her silver eyes met Mason's, and she shook her head. "No, I will not abandon him. Not for fear. Not for prophecy. Not for anyone." The light flared violently. Mason felt its energy hitting him, scorching, pulling, yet he did not falter. He pressed closer to Elira, grounding her. "I am not afraid. I trust you, Elira. We will survive this. Together." The heartlight responded, not with destruction but with a strange, resonant pulse. Mason's hands against hers seemed to calm it, as if his courage and determination could contain its power. The court gasped. No mortal, no creature, had ever survived the curse of the heartlight, yet here it was, bending to the will of a human's heart. Elira's tears fell freely. It's listening to you," she whispered. "Your heart, it's keeping us safe." Mason smiled faintly, though the energy sapped his strength. "Not just mine, ours. It's our bond, Elira, love like this. It can change things even the stars fear." The emperor watched in stunned silence. Generations of fear and superstition were being shattered before his eyes. The princess's curse, the same curse that had haunted the Varan Empire for centuries, was no longer an unstoppable force. It was responding to love, to courage, to humanity itself. Yet the danger was far from over. Mason staggered, drained by the energy. Elira fell to her knees beside him, wrapping her arms around him, willing him to hold on. The heartlight's glow ebbed and flowed, wild but contained. And for the first time, Elira understood the truth of the prophecy. Her heart would bring ruin to any who touched it, except the one from the broken world. Mason looked up at her, sweat and dust streaking his face, but a small smile tugged at his lips. I can feel it, Elira. I'm alive. Because of you, and you, because of me." Her hands trembled over his face. "I won't let anything take you from me." The palace remained silent, witnessing a miracle unfold. A human, fragile by nature, defying a centuries-old curse and surviving. Elira realized that the love she shared with Mason was stronger than any prophecy. Stronger than fear, stronger than the curse itself, and in that moment, standing together in the glowing garden, Elira and Mason knew one undeniable truth. They could face anything, as long as they faced it together. No one had dared to court the princess before, but the human had not only survived the curse, he had proven that love could conquer even destiny itself. The court was stunned into silence. For centuries, every attempt to touch the princess had ended in ruin, yet here stood a human, alive, unbroken, and holding her hand as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Elira watched Mason carefully, feeling the warmth of his presence calm the storm of her heartlight. The impossible had happened, but the story was not over. That evening, the palace priests gathered ancient scrolls and prophecies, searching for meaning in this miracle. They read aloud, their voices trembling. "Her heart will bring ruin to any who touch it save one born of the broken world." The words fell like stones into Elira's chest. The broken world. Earth, she whispered, realization dawning. That is him. Mason. He is the one the prophecy spoke of. Mason, listening, tilted his head. The prophecy? Wait. So all those years of fear and warnings, they were waiting for me? Elira nodded, tears filling her silver eyes. It seemed so. Every curse, every tragedy, every lost suitor. It was waiting for someone like you. Someone human, someone who could see me for me. The weight of that truth pressed upon them both. Mason reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Then let's make sure we don't fail, he said softly. We were given a chance. Let's not waste it. The next days were filled with tension. The curse pulsed with strange energy whenever Elira and Mason were apart. It was not violent anymore, it seemed, aware, as if testing their bond. Every time Mason drew near, the energy calmed. Every time he left, it grew restless. The palace watched in awe as a human and a princess danced with an ancient power thought unstoppable. One night, in the secret garden where their journey had begun, Elira confronted her fear. Mason, what if this bond isn't enough? What if the curse is still stronger? He cupped her face gently, their foreheads touching. Then we face it together. Fear doesn't define us. Love does, and ours. Ours is stronger than anything I've ever known. Tears fell from her eyes as she realized how much she had longed for this. The simple courage of a human, unafraid to stand beside her. She had waited a lifetime for someone who would see her heart, not the curse, and now she had him. The curse reacted again. A brilliant wave of light surged from her chest, sweeping across the garden. Flowers shimmered, the air trembled, and the twin moons seemed to glow brighter. Mason felt it, and yet he did not falter. He pressed himself closer, anchoring Elira with his unwavering human heart. Suddenly, the light condensed into a soft radiance, pulsing gently rather than violently. The palace guards, who had arrived expecting disaster, froze in disbelief. For the first time in history, the heart light did not destroy. It responded. It was as if the curse had finally recognized the one it could not harm. Elira gasped. Mason, it's letting us live. The curse, it's lifting. Mason smiled, his hand warm against hers. Not just letting us live. It's responding to us. To our love. That's the power you've always had, Elira. The power of your heart, paired with trust, courage, and connection. The priests whispered among themselves, realizing the prophecy had been misunderstood for centuries. The curse was not a punishment. It was a test meant to find the human strong enough to survive it and to love her fearlessly. Elira wrapped her arms around Mason, her tears falling freely. You saved me, she whispered. Mason shook his head, pressing his forehead against hers. No, you saved me. From a life without hope, from fear, from loneliness. The twin moons reflected in Elira's silver eyes as she realized the truth of it all. Love had been waiting for centuries to find its human champion, and she had finally found him. Together, they had not only survived the impossible, they had rewritten it. The palace watched in stunned silence, realizing that a new era had begun. Humans, fragile yet brave, had proven their worth not with war or conquest, but with courage, loyalty, and the strength to love in the face of impossible odds. And Elira, once untouchable and feared, finally felt free. Free to love, free to hope, free to be herself without prophecy or curse dictating her fate. No one had dared to court the princess before. But the human had not only claimed her heart, he had fulfilled a prophecy and lifted a curse that had haunted a galaxy for centuries. And in his arms, Elira finally knew what it meant to be truly alive. The palace had never been quieter, and yet never had it felt so alive. The curse that had haunted the Varan Empire for generations had lifted, and its impossible weight was replaced by something new: hope. Elira and Mason walked together through the gardens, their hands entwined, feeling the calm pulse of the heartlight in perfect rhythm with their own hearts. For Elira, it was more than freedom. It was life itself. She had lived in fear for so long that every step now felt like a small rebellion, a celebration of courage. Mason looked at her, his dark eyes steady and gentle, and she realized that he had changed her world not through power, but through humanity. The simple, extraordinary strength of being human. The court still watched, but the whispers were different now. The priest no longer spoke of doom. Ministers no longer trembled at her presence. Even the emperor, who had once stood torn between fear and authority, now looked at them with a mixture of awe and respect. "You have changed everything," the emperor admitted quietly, his voice carrying across the hall. "Not just the curse, but our understanding, humanity, has shown us what we have long forgotten." Elira smiled, resting her head on Mason's shoulder. "No one changed me, Father. I changed because I finally allowed someone to see me, and he taught me that courage isn't about strength alone. It's about heart." Mason chuckled softly. "You make it sound like I did all the work," he said, squeezing her hand. "Truth is, I just followed where your heart led me." Together they walked beneath the silver trees, now shimmering softly without the violent glow of the curse. Flowers bowed to them as if acknowledging their triumph. The air smelled of warmth and promise, a quiet contrast to the fear that had once filled every corner of the palace. Yet the real miracle was not in the light or the flowers, but in the bond between the princess and the human. Their love had not only survived an ancient curse, it had conquered it. Elira's heartlight no longer burned dangerously. It radiated gently in